This is Around the Northwest for this Tuesday afternoon. Now, there's another book out. It's the day of Johns on this show, from John Creedon to John O'Connor, because I'm going to chat now a little bit about a book about Tayto, Tayto Crisps. Well, we call them crisps in the States. They're called chips. And really, do we call them crisps? Because sometimes, you'll hear, no, I just got a bag of Tayto. So ingrained is the brand in our psyche that we just call them Tayto. Anyhow, this book is the story of Tayto, the original Irish crisp. John O'Connor is managing director of Tayto Crisps and joins us now. John, good afternoon to you.
And good afternoon to you, John.
Now, it's a book that looks back, and this isn't a satirical book because we've had Mr. Tayto in character and in different guises and so on in books and stuff, and picture books and that in the past. But this is a proper book about the history of crisps here in Ireland, in particular at Tayto. And it's a 70-year history, and it goes back to very humble beginnings, and a man called Joe, well, he became known as Joe Spud Murphy.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, it's a celebration of a lifetime, so to speak. 70 years since the brand was created by Joe Murphy in Dublin in 1954. So he started off in a two-roomed operation just around the corner from the GPO. Yeah. And people might be shocked to hear, but the production process started off with a bathtub, some vegetable slicers, and basically a chip fryer that you'd use in your house or in a chipper, so to speak. And from there until 70 years later, it's been an incredible journey.
He used to buy the spuds from a wholesale market, and his car wasn't the biggest, so he had to do 2 runs every day.
Yep, he had basically a Morris Minor and could only fit 2 sacks of spuds in the Morris Minor.
Yeah.
So it was a double journey. He had started off his life as selling 4 bags of spuds on his production process to where it is today. So and he was literally he was right in the heartland of Dublin. So we'd head down to the local fruit and veg market, not too far away, to collect his potatoes.
And then the whole story about cheese and onion, because Tayto was synonymous with the flavoured cheese and onion, and there's a bit in the book about that and how it came about. Well, Joe himself told the story that it came about by accident. He was a great man for telling a story, it seems, and for a great PR man, really. But the way he tells it, it was by accident.
Yeah, I mean, up to the time that Joe got involved in crisp manufacture in 1954, most of the product was coming in from England, from the UK. So the quality, if you take a view that it was transferring itself all the way from the UK into Ireland, the quality wasn't great. So bag seals weren't like what they are today. So by the time that crisps got to Ireland, they were stale. And the only crisps that you could get at that stage was a normal bag of crisps. There was no flavor on it. And you used to get a little sachet in the bottom of the bag, which had salt in it. And you basically took the sachet out, sprinkled it over your crisps, and that was your salted variety of crisps. And Joe, when he started off, wanted to kind of push the boundaries a little bit and say, well, look, let's have some more flavor. So apart from a salted variety, he said, I'll do a cheese variety and I'll also do an onion variety. And as the story goes, and was confirmed by one of his sons, Barry, who visits us here on a regular basis still from Canada. He lives in Canada. Joe, the stock management might have been a little bit awry at the time, and he had a bit too much onion flavor and decided, sure, we'll pop a little bit of onion in with the cheese. Shouldn't make too much of a difference. Yeah. And lo and behold, that was the start of it. They kind of stumbled on something that said, look, this is interesting. This flavor could work. And a gentleman called Seamus Burke, who hailed from the northwest around the Sligo area. Seamus was his technical man, one of the first 4 employees. And he got to work on just getting the balance right, as they say, and the rest is history. The first creation of cheese and onion happened within Ireland by Joe Murphy and Seamus.
Now, it wasn't easy. Like now, Tayto's everywhere, but it wasn't easy at the start. And he was. You always have competition, and he was up against competition from coming in from England, and he wanted to establish his flavour of crisps and also the Tayto brand. And get out there, and he had he started off with some of the sellers carrying out tins from from a setup, and then it developed. Then he managed to get a fleet of vans on the road. But there's one story about a neon sign that I think epitomizes him, and it went up in an iconic corner of Dublin. And
Yeah,
tell us a wee
yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, Joe was he was probably a man before his time, and I know that that term can be used a lot, but he was a real entrepreneur, and he was a real marketeer. And there's the term now that we all know about guerrilla marketing. You know, that clever marketing that you don't necessarily have to spend an awful lot of money on, but you get some real impact. And he was there at the very early stages of that. So his attitude was, look, how can I get my brand out into the community and noticed everywhere? So on O'Connell Bridge, there's the famous Lafayette building, which is still there today. And Joe came up with this wonderful idea. It's about a 5-store building, and he had a neon sign made for €70, and literally it sat on that building for I think about 10, 15 years or something like that. But it meant the footfall, and every famous photograph that would ever be taken in Dublin was on O'Connell Street and O'Connell Bridge, and Tayto loomed large within that for many, many years, until things changed. And what do you call it? The county council in Dublin turned around and said, I think we want to clean up the city. Let's lose some of the neon signs. So that's when it came down, for no other reason than that.
Many years later. The story goes on then about how it was established, and the book has many, the story is told, and plenty of pictures of, about of Joe, and boxes of crisps been shipped out from the factory, and old posters as well, and pictures of old crisp packets. Back in the early days, it was brown and white.
It was brown and white. You wouldn't recognize what was the original bag of Tayto to what it is today with its red, white, and blue. So yeah, it was brown and white. It was a paper type bag. So the seals weren't great on it, and believe it or not, some of your listeners may be horrified, but the bags were sealed by wallpaper paste. So a little dab of wallpaper paste across the top of the bag, and there it was sealed. And it was by a lady, one of the first employees, Bernie Kane, was one of the first employees, and that was her first job, was sealing the bags of Tayto. And sadly, Bernie passed away just back in August of this year. So we were kind of a little bit disappointed. She knew the book was happening. We had spoken to her to get some of her thoughts on it, but unfortunately she passed away just a little bit before the book was published. But she remains very dear in our memory, so to speak.
The story moves on then, of course, to Ray Coyle, another man who's almost synonymous with Tayto and Tayto Park. I know it's changed now to Emerald Park, but that's a big story in the evolution of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really transferred from one entrepreneur to another entrepreneur. So, Joe started in 1954, and like any organization that grows, it has growing pains, it has challenges. You mentioned it there earlier, John. So at a point in time, Joe had sold the business to a company called Beatrice Foods, which was based over in North America. And they were involved in the business probably from 1964 right up to, in different guises, right up to the late 1990s. CNC Group bought it at that stage. But then Ray got involved in terms of supplying of product. So Tayto was looking at its manufacturing processes. So Raymond got involved in terms of manufacturing snacks first, and then crisps. And the ideal opportunity came in kind of 2006, 2007, when CNC Group wanted to sell the company. And lo and behold, Raymond came in and he bought the business. So he had the manufacturing already, bought the business. And I think what was fantastic about it was that Raymond was a real entrepreneur. He was nearly cut in the exact same cloth as Joe. And it was kind of a rebirth for the business, so to speak, because Raymond had a great joy of life, always loved the crack, and to an extent took a view to say, look, let's make this fun. Let's, take it away from the corporate entity, so to speak, at that stage. Let's make it fun. So a lot of the activities that we did from 2007 all the way up to today, it was the first time that we put Mr. Tayto front and center of the business. So up to that, he was on the pack, but then he started to kind of show as the front man of the business, for a better choice of word. And the first thing was back in 2007, when the Taoiseach Bertie Ahern called a snap election, and the crazy idea came up, sure, will we put him up for election? And ever since then, every campaign has kind of had Mr. Tayto front and center with it. And a lot of that, I have to say, in those early stages from 2007, was Raymond, his brainchild. A lot of the stuff was his brainchild at that stage, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And it might surprise a lot of people to know that there's actually two Taytos, if you like, here in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
One north, one south.
Yeah.
And just explain briefly how that came about. How there's different branding actually on the one in the north.
Absolutely. I mean, it was, as we said, Joe founded Tayto in the Republic of Ireland in 1954. Business was doing very well, but he couldn't keep up with demand. And there was a gentleman in Northern Ireland called Thomas Hutchinson. And Thomas Hutchinson was impressed with what Joe was doing with the brand and how he was making this great success. And Thomas contacted Joe and he said to him, look, I'd like to do something with this brand. Would you sell me the rights to the Tayto name? And I'll make crisps up in Northern Ireland. And from there, then Joe sold it for, in this day and age, a very keen price. You'd nearly cry for the amount of money that he sold it for. But from there on, then it was that the Hutchinson family, who are still there today, manufacture crisps in Northern Ireland. They sell the product in Northern Ireland. And as you say, John, it's very different. They have a yellow pack with a bit of red on it. We're red, white, and blue. The flavors are very different. Everything is very different. The Mr. Tayto character is very different. So yeah, that was the story behind it. It was only 2 short years after the creation of Tayto in 1954 that the northern product came into the marketplace up there.
And finally, John, I want to ask you about the name. The name came from, do I remember right, from Joe's son?
It is, yeah. It was one of his sons, his eldest son, was very partial to potatoes at his dinner when he was very, very young. But the word potato was a little bit too much of a stretch for him. So when he would demand more, he would say, more Taytos, more Taytos. And Joe said, I like the idea of that. And that's how it came about. Tayto was the creation from that. So there's some lovely little stories within the book, so to speak, that will take people back, take your listeners back in terms of the journey that everyone's been on, because I think everybody feels a little bit of ownership of Tayto over the years and holds a little bit of special thoughts within their own minds, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you're Irish, then you'll definitely be familiar with Tayto from growing up and right up to this day. It's relevant now as it was back then. Well, the story started in 1954 and is told in great detail in the book, The Story of Tayto, the original Irish crisp. John O'Connor, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, John. Take care.